Matt Greenwood here with Mac Panel Company. I'm super excited to welcome you guys to our first ever episode of Mac Panel Test Connect, where we not only connect you with high-performing test connectors, but also partners that will help you dominate any testing application. The word of today will be obsolescence management. And here with me is two folks that are experts in the field, but also experts by way of explaining obsolescence and obsolescence management. We have Luke MacBee here with Orbis and Dave Wilson with Mac Panel. Luke, would you mind just introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, for sure.
Matt. And my name's Luke. I've been working in the industry for about 12 years now, in everything from, defense, aerospace, some medical stuff as well, and commercial.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Dave, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dave Wilson. Been with Mac Panel for 20 years, and first 8 years was in the UK. Managing the resource over there, and since then I've been over here in the US, in North Carolina.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys again for joining us. Now, we're talking today about obsolescence and more to the point about obsolescence management. I want to kind of predefine what we're going to be talking about, because those words, it sounds like they can be catchphrases or just something we kind of throw out. So let me define it. From my understanding, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but obsolescence is when either a hardware or a software component within a test system becomes obsolete. And the management side of that is when test engineers are tasked with basically controlling or mitigating the risk that the obsolescence can bring to the test system. Is that an accurate description of obsolescence management?
Yeah, and it's both hardware and software. So either can go obsolete. From a Mac Panel point of view, where we normally hear about it, it's from the hardware side. But I know Orbis, come across instances where the software also becomes obsolete, or you're trying to update that. So
yeah, and from a software perspective, you're looking at operating systems, development environments, even drivers themselves. So. And one of the big things that we see all the time is you're looking at your interface cards. Those are the number one thing that we have problems with, and it can even be from in PLC if we're talking about any kind of like PXI platforms, SCXI platforms. Those are very dated at this point. And how do we really begin to tackle that situation and when should you start to actually look at that and say, hey, we need to, we've got a system that we want to run for 20 years on a product line, or just a system that's, maybe performing a critical mission somewhere. How do we tackle this problem and ensure that we have as much uptime as possible?
Gotcha. So here's a question. You mentioned that it can be both software and hardware. How much of a problem is obsolescence, and then how much time are typically test engineers spending on obsolescence management from y'all's experience?
The majority of stuff that I see in the industry is really reactive. If I had a customer come to me and say, all right, I need a turnkey solution to solve our problem, and they're always like, okay, that's like one of the last things that they think about. Like, we know that this needs to last for 20 years, but do they really want to put that initial investment into either creating a plan for it, right, or buying enough equipment, in how they really spec out the project to ensure that they're going to have support, for the entire life of the product.
Yeah, I mean, we have one or two customers who regularly will ask us, are your products going obsolete? What are your plans? Like, that's rare. More often, we'll get a customer coming to us and saying, hey, this product that we've been buying is that another piece of hardware has gone obsolete or is about to go obsolete, and we're using your connector on the front of it, and will your connector now mate accurately to the item that we're going to buy? It's usually right at the very last minute. And then they're starting to think, well, what are all the knock-on effects of that? And, maybe there are software effects and all those sort of things. But it's usually, from my point of view, it's too late.
Wow.
When they're asking us the question.
Yeah. It's usually when they have a problem and they're like, okay, I need to go out and buy a new card, or I need to get a new interface because this one burned up for whatever outside reasons, and they go to jump on and hit up the product line, and it's like, oh well, this doesn't exist anymore.
So here's a situation I hear a lot of times from various test engineers, where you said that they can go out and they can buy a card, right? What if they just front load all of that stuff, aka hold spares? Is that not an approach? Is that a good approach, or is that a bad approach?
Well, I mean, it could be an approach. I look at it from, when you're loading spares, it's more from a maintenance perspective, because we all know that the products that are in use, things are going to deteriorate, and you're just going to have to maintain them. And I see that as spares are truly meant for maintenance a lot of the time. Now, if you have an entire company that's continually making that product new every year, like year after year, then that's a whole nother thing. And you don't have to worry about the obsolescence side of it. But you like buying, 10 cards or something like that are very expensive. It's high capital up front. You might have to worry about calibration with them just sitting on the shelf somewhere. There's a lot of problems. I mean, say they have some kind of memory in them, and they've got some kind of little a battery or something,
right.
And that needs to get replaced. And so it's you're having to maintain those as well as
maintain your test system with the spares,
yeah,
right? So you're maintaining spares with the things that are supposed to maintain your test system,
and you may never even use the thing.
Yeah. So there's cost in inventory, there's cost in maintenance of this stuff.
Absolutely.
Dave, what's your take on it?
But my point of view on this, is that not better in some circumstances than having no plan whatsoever?
I mean, true.
So and I'm sure actually, I know from experience that some customers will use that. I mean, we manufactured product 50 years ago, and we've still got companies coming to us now wanting to know, can we repair it? Can we replace it? And sometimes we can. Most of the time we can't, and we'll go to them with, an alternative plan, an alternative connector style or whatever. And we know that some customers still will prefer to Band-Aid it or try to buy, a number of spares. So I'm thinking from their point of view, they're thinking that this is a plan. It's a proactive plan. I'm not necessarily, I agree with that, but there's definitely an argument for it.
Yeah.
So would you agree that it's a proactive plan, or do you think it's a reactive kind of?
I mean, I definitely think it's, I personally think it's reactive.
Interesting. Okay. So here's another question. It sounds to me like when speaking about repair or replace, it's either black and white. Is that correct? Or is there not some kind of middle ground that folks can kind of take?
I mean, it's never that simple.
Okay.
I mean, every single situation is going to be different. Do we repair it? Can we economically repair? Do we have to replace because there is no economic repair? There are so many choices. I mean, I think that, one of the things that we kind of look at is making the right decision up front. So, in terms of when the system is very first designed, you're not going to designing obsolescence in, but you're designing a plan that is going to allow you to deal with obsolescence issues more easily. So, for instance, going for a modular system, it's something that kind of we preach because we see it time and again, whereas a modular approach allows you to upgrade more easily, and deal with obsolescence issues.
When you say
more easily.
modular, explain that to me. Modular.
Well, I mean, in terms
what
of
would be a modular system?
we're talking test systems, so we're talking a modular platform such as PXI
Okay.
as an example.
Interesting. Okay.
From our simplistic point of view, and when we're predominantly looking at the connector part of it,
Right.
that has so many advantages in terms of not just now, but if products do go obsolete, being able to replace them more easily.
Right. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that it's probably best to almost not necessarily plan for obsolescence, but what you're doing is you're thinking about it up front. You're creating a test environment or a platform through a modular platform that'll help you grow the test system and or manage that obsolescence as you go instead of trying to be either reactive or.
Well, kind of, but it's more of a case of kind of think about all these things up front, and I'm sure, I think about the hardware
Right.
side of it. I'm sure there are software, requirements, or there are choices in software as well that can either make this easy or make it more difficult going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're looking at choosing somebody to create a system for you, they really need to look at it and say, hey, here's a card that we might need to switch out. How hard is it going to be to go into the next iteration of that? Is it going to be a plug and play architecture? Is it going to be a modular architecture from a software perspective? But I will be honest, like the number one thing that we worry about is the hardware. It's fairly easy to move forward from a development environment or getting, upgrading the OS and stuff like that. There can be some work done in there, but it's usually not like a game breaking story. So, but the hardware is really where it comes into play. But that also comes into play with software too. When you have to change the cards, sometimes you have to go back in and change a bunch of the software, the drivers, the whole interaction of all that kind of stuff too. So.
Okay, so is there a time when this kind of proactive approach to obsolescence management, whereas it's not just proactive, but we're also helping the customer manage obsolescence throughout the life cycle of the test platform? Is there a time where MacPanel and Orbis have worked together to execute this type of management, this obsolescence management?
Absolutely. We partnered with a major transit authority. We use the Scout interface and a PXI platform, both of which are very modular to help mitigate some of the obsolescence risks.
And is it not true, more about this than me, that when you started looking at the project initially, it was quite a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. And obviously we worked closely together. And I know that, recently the customers come back and said, look, through problems with obsolescence or through just requirements to upgrade what they're doing, Orbis are now looking at that project again, effectively. And did any of the choices that we made together X number of years ago help in that process now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all we're really going to have to do is replace the card with a newer version of it. And, the interface is going to be the same. All they're going to have to do is literally plug up, we'll put a new card in there. We might have to change some drivers, but it'll be a very minor change. And that really helps out with, taking care of something that doesn't exist anymore and keeping them up and running.
Yeah. I mean, I think that this kind of speaks for itself in a way in terms of, obsolescence management to some extent starts, with that first choice, in terms of how you start. Having said that, if you've got an old system, and lots of people have old test systems that for one reason or another, they've, inherited, it's been there, it's worked, and it's worked well for a long time, but then you start to get products going obsolete. It comes back to this repair or replace sort of thing, and that decision, and it's not that simple, and everyone's going to be different. So as we've been talking, I've kind of been thinking about nothing to do with, test management or whatever, but just a personal issue I had a few months ago. My son lives over in the UK. He runs a dog walking business. Okay. So he needs a car for his business. Not making a huge amount of money. So he bought a cheap car, no warranty on it. And it was all he could afford. To be honest, that was what he could afford. So he did that, made that choice, ran it. I don't know, 3 months later, turbo goes on it. The whole thing's, no longer any use to anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
So, he's on the phone to his dad saying, "Dad, what do I do? My business is going down the pan, because I've gotten..." So,
Did you tell him you should have thought about it first?
well, absolutely. But he, the choice was made at the time. You make a choice based on the information that you've got.
Right.
Yep.
Now, he came to me saying, "Look, plan A didn't work. I tried to, go the cheap route. It didn't work." So, Dad then puts his, hand in his pocket and lends his son some money to go out and buy a better vehicle with a 3-year warranty on it.
Right.
So, decisions been made that I believe will actually save me money long term, because he's not going to be coming for handouts when, something else breaks down and he can't afford to fix it. So a lot of these situations boil down to that type of decision. Do we make a short term, it's almost a Band-Aid.
Right.
Buying that cheap car was almost a Band-Aid. We did it, thought it was the right decision at the time. In retrospect, very soon on that one, we realized that it wasn't. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
And I think test engineers, are faced with this so often.
Absolutely. And it's really got to do about, how much they're willing to invest in the start, If you're looking at creating a system, one of the examples I have, I've had this customer, they spent a decent amount of money up front, and there was no plan for obsolescence at all. There were no spares. Currently the thing just, you have to go onto eBay and buy parts.
Right.
And so they are in super Band-Aid mode. They're buying those parts on eBay just to keep it going. And and they call us for help, and we go in and we're like, this is a replace situation, because you have just continually Band-Aided this thing over and over and over for years. And it's not a situation that anybody wants to be in.
So the moral of that story is eBay is not a obsolescence management approach.
eBay is not your obsolescence management plan.
I'll have to agree. Yeah.
So it sounds like when we're talking about obsolescence management, there's two things folks can do. It's either repair or replace. Is there not something in between that folks can be thinking of?
Oh yeah, I think from my way of thinking, if you're at that repair or replace decision-making time, then you've kind of gone too far. In a way, what we're talking about is trying to plan for obsolescence, not deal with it when it becomes an issue. So, I think if you're having to make that repair or replace decision, then you kind of... at a very difficult point anyway.
Right.
I think, by having a plan, so looking at in the what ifs, also knowing in advance, how long has each of the components in your system, got, what's its life, and most companies are going to have that information available. I've said, we get asked for it at MacPanel quite regularly, have you got any plans to obsolete this product in the next 5 years?
Right.
And we'll answer those questions. So most companies that are being dealt with have this information. So kind of plan for it. And then when you put together a plan, then there are resources that can help you to deal with that. Okay. Orbis and MacPanel being examples of good resource to contact and say, hey, looks like we're going to have this problem. Looks like this. What should we do now? Because in 3 years' time, that's going to go obsolete, as an example. So yes.
Yeah. So I think a good part of an obsolescence plan is really just like continued support from, whoever you had make the product in the first place, because they could reassess for you every couple of years, look at like what is the, you know, of the components of this system, what is on the brink of getting ready to leave the market, and if we do need to put something in there that's newer, like, I mean, you know, you could even look at adding new features, you know, upgrading, and having something that maybe allows you to do more with your system as well.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you guys say is really plan for obsolescence management. Also, think about who your vendors, who your partners will be in helping you with this approach. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's kind of more of an incremental approach.
Right, okay.
It's not a, hey, we've got a problem, we need to deal with it. It's thinking about it over a period of time and it being part of your company strategy in terms of dealing with this. It's really important that these test systems work and work reliably. And if you get an item that goes obsolete and it suddenly breaks down and you've got to deal with it there and then, you know, that's when bad decisions are often made.
Right. Okay.
So,
well, guys, it looks like we're at the end of this show, but listen, like many test engineers, I'm sure that somebody out there listening is either running against an obsolescence management issue now or will in the future. If so, I highly recommend you visit macpanel.com/obsolescence, where you can download a free case study, and also a link to a paper about obsolescence management, where we try to help you with some information to guide you in the right direction. So thank you for listening to Mac Panel Test Connect, where we connect you with high performance connectors and partners to help you dominate test applications.